When you think rare 1911s, you probably think Singer, but actually the rarest 1911 is one that came out of the defunct old Ross rifle factory in Quebec. Thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at Morphy's with a North American Arms Company 1911. This is, in fact, the rarest pattern of 1911 ever manufactured, and it's a World War I gun, not a World War II gun. So the backstory here is, in the summer of 1918, the US government wanted to increase 1911 production, but all the companies in the US that were currently making the guns were operating at capacity, and most of them had all sorts of other contracts for other war material, didn't have space to expand. So the government looks to issue new contracts to new manufacturers to produce 1911s. And someone gets the idea of sending a contract to the old Ross Rifle Company. Now, the backstory there, if you're not familiar with it, the Canadians adopt the straight-pull Ross rifle in World War I. It ends up having significant problems and is replaced in a cloud of issues with the Lee Enfield. The Ross Rifle Company goes bankrupt as a result. I have a whole series of videos on this if you're interested in them. But in March of 1917, the Ross Rifle Company factory becomes the Dominion Rifle Factory. And this is sort of a temporary corporation set up just to take all the detritus of the Ross Rifle Company and assemble whatever guns can be made out of the existing parts, clean up everything, essentially shut down the place and sell as much as they can to make some money back. And by March of 1918, they've finished this, and what's left is a basically defunct, abandoned rifle factory. Now, it's not clear to me if the US government realized that the Ross Rifle Company was gone. This is 1918. It's not like, there's an internet and they can just Google, Ross Rifle Company current business. But whether they understood who was in control of this factory or not, the fact does exist that the factory was there and theoretically was available. Now, when the US government starts throwing around proposals for contracts and sends one up to Canada, there is definite interest in Canada, both on the part of entrepreneurs who see this as a way to make some money, and on the part of government trade officials who realize that a big contract like this could be a really good thing just for general economic sustainment up in Quebec. So a deal is arranged, and the North American Arms Company is given a contract to manufacture 500,000 1911s, 500,000 of them. Deliveries are supposed to start in December of 1918. And what makes this a little bit complicated is that the North American Arms Company was incorporated into existence on June 28th, 1918, like right at this exact same time. This isn't an existing company. It's a brand new one formed by not a consortium of gun makers or an inventor. No, it's formed by two lawyers, a guy named Edmond Ryckman and a guy named James Denison, both Canadians, who create this company and then immediately get a contract for 500,000 1911s. This sounds kind of sketchy. And if you agree, if you think, like, that sounds kind of sketchy, you're not alone. The US envoy involved in working with Canadian manufacturers expressed over the course of the summer and fall of 1918, some serious doubts as to whether this factory was actually going to be able to produce pistols or produce them to the quality standards that were required. But they did get the chance. In July of 1918, Colt had a complete technical data package on the 1911 that they sent up to Canada for this contract, along with 6 sample pistols. Of course, the new manufactured guns are required to be completely parts interchangeable with all existing 1911s. And so the North American Arms Company, in theory, gets down to business. So let me show you up close what came out of that factory. So we have here our North American Arms gun, and I have a very nice Colt model of 1911, World War I era gun, as a comparator, so I can show you the differences. First off, we of course have markings on the left side of the slide, manufactured by North American Arms Company Limited, Quebec, Canada. On the right side of the gun, where we would normally expect a serial number and a designation, nothing on here. Remember, these North American Arms guns were never actually delivered to the US. They have no proof marks on them, they have no model designation, and the distinctive element of the markings, other than that, is the fact that they have a serial number back here, just behind the slide serrations. Ooh, and yes, I'm taking a screwdriver to a 6-figure gun, because yeah, these things go nicely over $100,000, often enough. And the serial number is repeated here underneath the left side grip panel of the gun. And then there's a third instance of the serial number on the left side of the trigger of all things. And it's just barely, we can only see the first digit there, 9, not the full 97. But take the trigger out, you'll see the whole serial number there on the side of the trigger. Now, in terms of mechanical features, a regular 1911 will have a lanyard loop on the back of the mainspring housing. The North American Arms guns do not. And then the other distinctively different part is the hammer. So North American Arms here has a hammer that has no checkering, and it is just slightly longer. See if you can set that up so you can see it. It's just slightly longer than a standard 1911 hammer. That's it. Those are the only differences between the North American Arms 1911s and standard production ones. These are tool room guns. But they were very well made. They're nicely finished. They're frankly excellent guns. And it's really kind of surprising that North American Arms was able to pull this off, in my opinion. Like, this is a company, this is a story that certainly looks like has all the hallmarks of being a scam. Like, let's get rich quick scheme. We got the opportunity for a government contract. Let's set up all the legal side and take the money and then, put in some sort of pro forma nothing to, prevent getting caught immediately and, step 3 profit. But in reality, North American Arms got farther than any of the other companies that were given late, summer 1918 contracts to make 1911. So it's kind of hard to fault them for that. By the way, one of the details here was that the United States was going to supply all of the raw materials needed to produce the guns. They had a contract price per gun that they were going to pay North American Arms, and then they were going to essentially deduct their cost, the American cost for materials from that purchase price, because getting things like ordnance steel and such into Canada or in Canada was difficult under a wartime economy. This is actually the highest documented serial number North American Arms gun that I'm familiar with. Prior to that, this is 97. Prior to seeing this one, the highest one I knew about was 94. There were approximately 100 of these guns that were actually created, actually manufactured by North American Arms. They're essentially pre-production tool room guns. There were no formal deliveries made to the United States. These all came out of Canada after the war. And of course, what happened with this contract, not surprisingly, there's an armistice on November 11th. This need for hundreds of thousands of new 1911 pistols goes away almost overnight, and the contract is canceled. Like, pretty much all the 1911 production contracts are canceled in December of 1918. This one is canceled on December 4th with no deliveries ever actually happening. There would, of course, be lawsuits over the money involved. Those are finally settled in 1920 or 1921. But ultimately, what came out are right about 100 Canadian 1911s, making this the rarest manufactured variation of the 1911, which is really pretty cool. And this one's in fantastic condition. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the look at this 1911A. Thanks for watching.